Yo, what up, world? It has been so long since we had the opportunity to talk to you guys. I am Jacques Slade, and right now you're listening to the Outside the Box podcast. We took a little bit of a break, and we knew we had to come back before the year was up just to say hello and let you guys know about some of the things that we thought were awesome, incredible, hype, that drip, lit, on fire emoji, all of those things for this year. Obviously, I couldn't do this show by myself. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be listening if that was the case. That's why I have two incredible hosts here with me. Of course, that is Nick Ingvall and Tiffany Beers. Nick, go ahead and tell them where they can find you.
Nick Ingvall, NickEngvall on all platforms. I'm just happy to be back conversing with the two of you, and hopefully I can learn about some shoes that I forgot this year, and just want to shout out both of you for your accomplishments in the last week or two, in Tiffany reaching 10,000 subscribers on YouTube and Jacques crossing 1 million, which is amazing. And you both deserve tons. So Tiffany, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Tiffany Beers. Worked in the sneaker industry for 13 years now, and this is my first almost full year kind of on social media and YouTube, so I'm pretty excited about that and super excited to share and with this podcast today. These two, I haven't talked to them in a while. It's like long lost brothers, and
yeah,
Jacques, a million, like holy shit, that's amazing. Congrats, man.
Thank you. But let's not downplay the 10,000 in a year. That's awesome. Like, let's not act like that's not a big deal. It took me, I think, like a year and a half, maybe 2 years to get 10,000. So, all kudos to you.
Thank you.
But it's been an interesting year in the sneaker world. Lots of really great stuff, and some not so good stuff. And because we like to stay on the bright side of things, we'll focus on, let's say, the things that we like, or the things that intrigued us, or the things that we thought kind of pushed the needle forward in the world of sneakers. And one thing, and I'll just kind of kick this off, that's been happening every year during the holiday season, especially for the last few years, is the Air Jordan 11 Concord. And there was some news that came out. I was spoken to by a bird. I'm unable to reveal my sources, but I was told that the Air Jordan 11 Concord that just released was the biggest single sneaker release in industry history, which says a lot, because Jordan Brand has been doing the Air Jordan 11 for the last few years, and even the Space Jams that released a few years ago, it seemed like those were everywhere, and everyone had a pair of those. So for this to come out and for this to be said, I think big kudos to them and that whole team over there at Jordan Brand. It's interesting to me about it is that there were people on my timeline that were saying they finally got a pair of Air Jordan 11 Concords, and because I am in the industry, I often have access, or I can get access to sneakers that are highly coveted, and without having to pay resale prices. I can generally pay like the normal price for them and get myself a pair. So it's I kind of felt a certain kind of way, and people were like, I finally had a pair. I've been trying to get a pair of these for 10 years or 15 years. And I was just like, man, like, I'm happy that they put these sort of numbers out there so these people were able to experience what it is to get that sneaker you've been trying to get for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's awesome that I heard probably from a different little bird that shall be named at no time in the future. But I heard the same kind of thing, and I think that it's long overdue. There's just been so many people that have wanted it, and the crazy part is I think that they probably could have made more, and I mean, like I wasn't able to get a pair, and which it's okay. Like I was lucky enough to get the last pair with a little help from friends up in Portland, and this time around I didn't really want to. I don't like asking for favors like that, and I'd rather just take my chances and kind of just like ride it out, and if it's all good if you miss them, like there's going to be more stuff. But it is really cool. You see a lot of people, saying that on social media, and I think too, like there was so much talk about every year. There's so much talk about like what gets messed up and what the quality and blah blah blah. And at the end of the day, like like this shoe is just such a beautiful shoe, and they, despite how nitpicky the internet can be, they did a really good job with this shoe. Like all of the reviews that I've seen were like really struggling to even like tear it down in any way. And that I think is even more impressive when you consider the numbers of how many that were made, and how many times, like, in the past, when especially Jordan Retros, they're the most super critiqued shoe on the planet, I think. So I think it's awesome to see this, and I hope, and they're still selling for above retail on, a lot of the secondary market platforms. So I think, hopefully we can kind of continue this, and, especially with, as until there's like this, I feel like there's this cap, right? Like at some point people will say, okay, like I don't want to have more than, X amount of shoes in my closet because it's just too much, or X amount of shoes in my life because it's just too much to work with. And there's a few shoes that are always going to slide into place, right? And I feel like the Jordan 11 is one of those shoes where if you're going to get an original color and, original detailing, like this one having the 45 on the back was really cool for a lot of us. And that to me is like cool. Like no matter what your limit of shoes is, this is probably one of those shoes that gets a slot on the wall, and you move one side and donate it or sell it or whatever to kind of make room for it. But I don't know. Right. Tiffany, how do you feel about it?
I thought it was interesting. I considered getting it, but I'm like, no, I'm not going to play into this game. But I did go on that day to check around 5 p.m. and it wasn't sold out yet. So I knew either they made a ton, which sounds like they did, or it wasn't selling well. Sounds like it was the first. But the thing that was cool to me was a whole bunch of people I talked to about it said it was the first time they got a shoe off sneakers, and they were so stoked, and like they'll forever remember it because it was their first shoe off sneakers. And so I thought that was super cool, but at the same time I'm thinking, okay, the demand just plummeted because they released so many of them, which isn't good. It's not necessarily good for the future of the brand, because that 11 is one of the grails, right? So I hope I hope they're being cautious with the supply and demand of some of these.
Yeah, it's interesting because you want everybody to be able to get a pair, but at the same time, like being in the business, we kind of understand the dynamics of supply and demand, even when like that means we don't get them as well, and the frustration that comes along with like wanting a sneaker and not being able to get it. Like I understand that I'm part of that process, and it really it's interesting because you do have to balance both sides of it. It's like, yes, people were able to get a pair, but now it's like, where will the craving for that shoe, where does that go now? Is that over for a lot of people because they do finally have a pair? Because I feel like people aren't going to wear these. They'll wear them once or twice, but they're going to kind of hold on to them to make sure they don't get messed up. And so they're not going to need another pair or have that want for another pair for a very long time. But maybe that's just me. I don't know. Maybe that's just how I think I would react in a situation like that. And maybe that's the problem.
I mean, for me, I think
it's interesting to watch it over the next year and see what happens to the resale of those too. And we'll just watch what the market does.
Yeah, because inevitably you'll have the restocks or the extra pairs that somehow didn't get to stores hitting websites, and it'll for the most part keep the secondary market pretty stable for a couple of months, I think. But to your point, I think that this like 7 years or whatever is a pretty decent amount of time in between releases. Maybe you're right though, because it's such a it's like the grail, so to speak, for so many people, that people do sit on them and not wear them as much. But then there's all the other things that factor into that, right? Like my 2011 pair is, already kind of yellowing on the outsole, and it just doesn't have the same kind of wow factor when I pull them out of the box.
Super yellow. Yeah, that 2011 pair went yellow like fast.
Yeah,
I was surprised by how quickly they turned yellow. It was a little disappointing to be honest, but I guess that's all part of the game that we play when it comes to sneakers. Yeah. Anyway, moving on from Jordan, moving on to I think we should kind of let's break this down into like categories that we think kind of for the year. I think because there's a ton of sneakers. I think we'd be here all night if we were like, oh, all of these sneakers were amazing.
Yeah.
So let's kind of break it down, and something that I think came up a lot this year was running, especially obviously for me because I obviously run a lot more regularly now. I know if you guys are on YouTube, you should be watching Tiffany's channel because she does a lot of reviews when it comes to running shoes and really talking about the tech, the fit, the density of the rubber, like a lot smarter stuff than I've ever talked about on my channel. So make sure you're following her. That's Tiffany Beers, or if you want to type the URL, it's Rumble Beers because she's about that life.
He's never gonna let that down.
Never gonna let. And
Never.
I just started CrossFit, so now it's accurate, right?
But one of the standout shoes for me this year was the Pegasus Turbo. I've always kind of run in the Pegasus shoes, but I wasn't married to it. I would run in the Pegasus. This year I ran a lot in the React. I've been running in the Under Armour Hover. I even took a couple runs in the Hoka. I don't even know how to say it. Hoka shoes. But the Pegasus Turbo definitely stood out as one of the more comfortable shoes for me this year. And I know, Nick, I think you've talked about the Pegasus Turbo. I believe, Tiffany, you have as well. Am I alone in this conversation? Is this my uppity runner in me talking? Like, what's going on here?
I have to say, the Pegasus Turbo, after the Epic React and then the Peg 35, which I really like the Peg 35 this year, that Turbo came out, and the Turbo came out in like August. I didn't pick up the Epic or the Peg 35 or any other running shoe in my closet since. It's my go-to shoe. It always feels good. It always feels comfortable. I got the original colorway, which looks a little dingy, I gotta say, after a while.
Yeah,
so that was the only thing I didn't like about it, but love that shoe up and down. And still, if I was going on an island and I could only take one pair of shoes, it would be the Peg Turbo.
That's the original colorway is the one with the pink stripe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the pair that I picked up too, and I 100% agree. I mean, it's definitely one of the most comfortable shoes I own, and it's the only downside to it is like that particular colorway just really kind of I wouldn't it's I mean I'm not very good at cleaning my shoes, but like it got dirty pretty quickly, but it also just kind of looked, like you said, it looks almost dingy at this point, but it's also probably preventable if I was not so lazy.
Yeah, it's been. Go ahead, Tiffany.
I was gonna say, I did throw it in the washing machine, and it did clean up pretty good, and survived it just fine. So maybe try that, Nick.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's outstanding. For those of you out there, even if you're not a runner, I would say try out the Pegasus Turbo. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, especially if you like the React. I think getting the Turbo is just going to kind of take that up a notch. Like, the Turbo is a great shoe, but I feel like it really takes that whole React feeling up a notch, and you'll really enjoy it, just from a comfort standpoint. And if you're a runner or training or anything like that, it's definitely something I would say to give a try, because I think you'll really enjoy it and like it. So yeah, and Nike's not paying me to say that. That's just the truth.
Yeah, I would agree.
Moving from go ahead.
I was just gonna say I would agree, and I would compare it to like the for me it's really close to the Ultra Boost in terms of like there's certain things about it, like when you slip it on, it's not gonna wear funny on your heel at all, or the tongue's not gonna rub funny on the top of your foot, and it's just an easy shoe to wear. And I think that's such an underrated thing when it comes to like the how we view shoes now, because there's so much hype around all of everything now. Because even this was like hyped up more than a typical running shoe, I think. But I would 100% agree. It's just such a go-to shoe.
Yep, absolutely. My only gripe is the price. I think they're $180 or $190 or something like that.
Yeah.
I would love to see those at like $150 or something like that. I think that would give them a little bit more acceptance. I think at that $180 price, people just don't look to like running shoes in that way unless it's the Ultra Boost. Somehow the Ultra Boost has kind of been able to kind of break that barrier. And I don't know if people look at the Pegasus in that it doesn't. The Pegasus name or the brand of Pegasus doesn't have the same sort of recognition as the Ultra Boost does, especially in the sneaker culture.
Yeah.
I think Pegasus has always been sort of attached to the running crowd as opposed to the sneakerhead crowd, and I think that dampens the impact that the shoe can have, especially with it priced at $180. But I'm sure Nike seems to be selling them pretty well, so I imagine they don't mind at all.
Yeah, and I just recently saw like not to keep going on the subject, but I just recently saw like I must have missed it before, or either that or it's fairly new, is like there's the women's version that's kind of like the XX that has the kind of it's almost like it looks like a Huarache type like sock liner, and then it has like a little bit more of an over the arch kind of I don't know what you would call it, like bracing or system type thing in the design, which like that to me is kind of interesting to see if they're able to take the basic kind of, let's say, like look and feel and turn it into other things, and incorporate the same like Zoom X or whatever, because it's not full Zoom X, right? It's like Zoom X and
I think it's Zoom X and React. I think the Zoom X is like the main cushioning, and then they have like React as like the carrier. I think it is.
Yeah, it's like a double layer. There's a little bit less Zoom X in there. But that Zoom Pegasus Turbo 20 or XX, it's $200 first of all.
Yeah.
And it's lifestyle meets.
Which shoe is that?
Running.
Which one?
It's called the Nike Zoom Pegasus Turbo.
Is a Zoom Pegasus
20.
Turbo 20 like XX?
Yeah, it's an interesting model. It's pretty new actually. Haven't tried it yet.
I don't think I'm gonna have to look that one up. I don't remember that one.
Yeah,
but what?
Go ahead. I was just gonna say I just came across it and I thought it was interesting to see that they're kind of expanding on the Pegasus Turbo, to step outside of just the standard issue.
Okay, I know it. Okay, I see it now. Okay, yeah. Got it. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. So now I was going to go off on a tangent, but no, let's stay focused. Speaking of women, we have, I would say, one of the dopest sneakerheads in the world here on the podcast. So I would in no way step over my bounds and say which shoe I thought was the best for women this year. So I'll let Tiffany lead this part of the conversation, just because I don't want to become a victim of like thinking I'm doing something wrong here.
Yeah, so I think this was the year for finally some really dedicated women sneaker releases, right? We saw the LeBron HFR, right, launched before the 16 was launched. We saw the Vogue collab with Jordan. We saw some coming out of Puma. We saw all the brands kind of getting on it, but not quite. Nike seemed to be kind of leading the way in it, and they definitely had some misses. The Vogue collab was a little bit like, what does Jordan and Vogue have anything to do with each other? But so I have to say, I liked a lot of the collabs. I liked that they were coming out with women's specific shoes. But again, I think it should be gender neutral. Overall, like, they're shoes. Whoever likes them should be able to wear them, and they should come in all sizes. So my favorite women's collab of the year was definitely the HFR from the LeBron 16. I mean, the way they did it, they worked with that fashion house, that women's fashion house, and they just dialed the details up from the LeBron 16 in a way that I think was totally unexpected. I thought it was going to be, kind of a play down, because that's usually what they do, right? The shrink it, pink it phenomenon. Yeah. But they really took the time and just outdid themselves. And still, to this day, I don't know that I'll ever wear that shoe, but that shoe is one of the most beautiful shoes I've ever seen. It's the quality of it and the details of it were just fantastic. And if that's a sign of women's shoes to come, I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, it definitely, I think, changed the perspective of a lot of people of what you could do with a women's shoe, which is kind of sad to say that it took something like that to change the perspective. And I feel like the women in the sneaker community have been vocal about this for a very long time, wanting something different and not being just not shrink it and pink it. I don't know if you guys follow Jazz on Twitter, but she's very vocal in this regard, in terms of like what they do, how the brands treat women, and when it comes to women's sneakers. She did a talk recently, and she posted part of the talk on her Instagram, and someone asked her, like, do women want their own sneaker store? And her response was no. Like, no, we don't want a different sneaker store. We want to be able to walk into Foot Locker just like everybody else and get what we want. Like, we shouldn't have to go to a different store that's pink or a different store that's catered to women. Like, it should just be a sneaker store, period, and we'd be able to walk in there and get it. And I just thought that, that's something as a man, that's something that I don't necessarily think about, because I can go in the sneaker store and pretty much get what I want. But it's awesome to see and to see, one, that the sneakers are coming around and that the designers and brands are really getting it, that you can create something dope for women and it's okay and they'll buy it, that you don't have to make it pink or just slim down and take out the tech for a men's shoe, that you can actually give them something unique that's catered directly to them. And I just think that's really, really dope. And I think the LeBron 16 HFR took it to another level. I think Jordan's been doing some cool stuff with Alulame and like with Vashti and stuff like that, but this kind of set a precedent and took things up a notch, which I'm really excited to see.
Yeah, I think I just think it's crazy that it's taken so long. Like, if you look at, like, even let's like look at like just footwear in general, right? Like, Footwear News called the Fila Disruptor the shoe of the year, right? And that's like primarily because like it became like a staple in like most women's closets this year somehow. Like, I don't know how Fila did that, other than like, it's like kind of an iconic style, and it's chunky and it fit the trend, and it's cheap, right? Mm-hmm. I think retails like $60 or $70 on that shoe. But like that shows you just how much the business is almost like driven by females and that purchasing power, yet it's still just like completely misunderstood from like almost every brand and every retailer. And I'm like dumbfounded by it. But I think that, the LeBron HFR is like absolutely gorgeous. Like, if that was, something that was made in my size, I would have been all over it, just because I just thought like the details on it were just insane. And yet it still had the the LeBron feel and like details for LeBron, but like obviously just in a totally unique way that you normally just don't see, right? Like talking about the Vogue collab, where it's like, okay, cool, we'll just take this shoe we kind of already created and we'll slap Anna Wintour initials on the back and it's good to go. So
yeah, and it's an interesting business. It's an interesting business model, because the LeBron HFR, in order for it to be popular, it had to be backed by a man, right? So on some level, good, but on some level, like, here we are, we're still back to the same business model. But at the same time, the women, the whole kind of world is changing a little bit, in that women are wearing sneakers to work more, right? Women are wearing sneakers in general more. And so that's making a lot more women buy shoes. So finally enough women are buying sneakers to justify brands doing custom stuff. Because in the past, if you're only going to sell 5,000, 3,000, it's not really worth the extra effort when you could make a shoe that's going to sell 1 million pair, So
Right.
I know the brands are trying to balance this, so I'm glad it's finally tipping forward. And I think we're just going to see it year after year get better and better. And again, like gender neutral shoes, people, like you don't go into a grocery store and there are not vegetables marketed for women versus men. Like it's not like,
Right,
like we're just all people.
Yep.
That's a good point. Man vegetables versus women vegetables. That's very funny.
I was trying to think of something neutral, like.
No, that's funny. No, that's funny. Just the thought of it is very funny to me. Now, moving on from women to retros. I guess that's not really moving on from women, but bringing up retros. I feel like retros had a good year this year. A lot of that led by Jordan Brand, obviously, because they are a bit of a heritage brand, even though they do focus on the future with performance and stuff like that. Heritage is obviously what brings home the bacon. And one of the standouts, I believe, this year was the Air Jordan 1. I feel like the Air Jordan 1 got a lot of love this year. There was a lot of great colorways of the Air Jordan 1, and they ended the year really, really strong with the Union collaboration, which caused hype that I hadn't seen for a Jordan 1 since like the Off-White kind of thing happened. So it was really refreshing to see that, and to see Jordan Brand allow someone to really deconstruct the Jordan 1, or continue to deconstruct the Jordan 1, and hopefully allow people with the right creative vision to even take that even further with the rest of the retro line. I think there's a lot of room to modernize these silhouettes or tell deeper stories with these silhouettes. I think people have gotten tired of the stories that they were telling over and over again. And what made the Union Jordan 1 work, I think, is because it was such a unique story. The shoe looked very unique. And obviously they were limited, so that obviously helped. But I just think people were attracted to the inventiveness of that collaboration. And so I just think it was a good year for the Jordan 1 and for retros in general. But maybe that's just me. I know I fully admit that I'm a part of the sneaker world and that I talk about this stuff every day. So my thoughts could be biased since especially I'm a Jordan 1 fan. So I'm open to any other suggestions in the retro market. But I thought retros did well this year.
No, I think the Jordan 1 was I mean they're almost there could have been too many good releases of the Jordan 1. That's about the only bad I could say about it. You had like even non-original colors that are kind of twists on the original, like the homage to home, the bread toes, then you got like the shadows were this year, I believe. Even just recently the Spider-Man shoe is like it's a Chicago 1, but it's like kind of a cool twist on it. And and then you get into like the Rookie of the Year, the court purple, those yellow joints. Like there was just like so many good colorways that came out, and then there was like the hype versions. Like you said, the Union 1 it's super dope that they're giving people a little bit of leeway to kind of mess with it and make it their own, because that's really what sneakers were about when like when I was a kid, like we would customize our stuff as much as we could to make it look different, like whether it's just like the way you lace your shoes or the way you pop the tongue, like all of those things are just give some personality to the shoe. And I think like for Jordan Brand to let beyond the Jordan 1s, but like Travis Scott do his thing with the 4s, and Nigel Sylvester with the 1s getting to do like a BMX inspired version. All that stuff just adds cool factor to, and like in a like real kind of way, right? I think that's the key, where there's so many times where the stories are like almost forced upon us, and not to pick on any particular one, but the Rookie of the Year shoe, right? Like that seems like a really forced story, especially if you've been in the sneaker world for a while, because that shoe just looks like the Escape shoes from the Escape Pack colorways from, I don't remember, like 8 years ago or something. So it's like yeah, of course we're going to recognize those colors and they're going to be good, but the Rookie of the Year story, do we really need that? I don't know, maybe not. Like,
right.
You know, maybe just let it go with like, this is a good colorway and people are going to like it. So I don't think that kind of storytelling done from the brand doesn't necessarily have the impact that it once did. You know, like, it's almost like let Union, let Virgil and Off-White, you know, tell that story. And when you know, I'm thinking like still retros, but like the Tinker 3s came out this year, right? And like the Justin Timberlake 3s, like those were such great spin-offs of like the classic shoe without it being forced. You know, maybe the Justin Timberlake stuff is, but like the Tinker shoe is like, to see the original sketch, like most of us had seen that for years, right? You know, it was in the forums and the magazines a decade ago, at least, maybe 20 years ago. And to see it kind of come to life is like, oh, cool. Like, now I already like tie those things together because I'm passionate about sneakers. So I agree with you. I think like there was just a lot of really good retro releases this year, and you know, even on the Nike side of things, there was some good runners. You know, like the Tuned Air stuff coming back was nice to see. And you know, even like, you know, the shape of like the Air Max 1 this year was really, really nice. Like, I've never bought like the original, you know, University Red or whatever, Varsity Red Air Max 1 before, just because it's not really like a color that I like. I like other colorways of that shoe, and the shape this year was just like so nice, and like the mudguard paneling being so almost like almost like parallel with the ground, and like so wide, where at times like that becomes really thin and it just doesn't look like the quality is there. But when you see that much red on the shoe, it pops so nicely. It's like, okay, I'm gonna get this will be the one time that I'm gonna step outside of my comfort zone in terms of colors and style, and just get it because it just looks so good. So props to the retros this year, I think.
Yeah, I think it was a good year for retros too. I mean, you can't deny there's a lot of shoe design out there, right? Like, people are trying some new things, but the Jordan 1 just looks so good always.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, like, I was at the airport a few weeks ago, and I was in like Taipei, I think, and this like older woman was dressed in all black, and she had a pair of black and red Jordan 1s on, and she just looked so fresh. It was just like badass, you know. And it was just like, that shoe, they can drop in every single color there ever is, and I think it'll do well. The interesting thing is too, it's $120. You know, it's not breaking the bank to get a bunch of those.
Yep.
Again, same with the Air Max. You know, I think that's the case with a lot of the retros. You're at the right price point too. So where some of the new tech, you know, is a little bit on the high side, like we were talking about the Turbo.
Yeah, and just to clarify for the audience, for women they're $120. For men they're $160. So just clarify.
All right, good to be a woman again.
Yeah. We've been there 160. So yeah, I think again it's just a great looking shoe. But if we're going to keep it 100, I do find them to be uncomfortable, even though I love the way that they look. And I switch out the insoles in mine. I know I've talked about this before. So if you are a fan of the Jordan 1 and you do recognize that they are uncomfortable, try switching out the insoles. Or the footbed, whatever you call it, with different ones from just like store-bought ones, and you'll be pleasantly surprised with how much of a difference it can make in your shoes. Totally makes a difference. And all right.
Yeah, I mean, we need React. We need React in those Jordans.
Oh,
I mean, I'll start a petition if you guys sign it.
Yeah,
Jacques.
Can you?
that would be amazing.
I'm already on it.
All right.
I'm already on it. If we can get like a lunar insert, a React insert, something, keep the regular shape of the shoe on the outside, make it look exactly the same, but just give me like a lunar insert, a React insert, something to make them more comfortable, and I would absolutely love it. But I know the issue with that is I know that the sneakerheads, the real deep sneakerheads, would complain like crazy if a Chicago or whatever colorway, or a home or whatever it is colorway, or the bread colorway of the Air Jordan 1 came out and it didn't have the Nike Air insole. They would lose their minds, knowing first of all, knowing how uncomfortable it is, but just because it's not exactly like it was when it released back in the day, they'd have a fit. Well, listen, people, the shoe needs to be more comfortable. I enjoy the way that it looks. Make it look exactly the same on the outside. Just make it feel a little more comfortable. Actually, no, make it a lot more comfortable on the inside, and I'd be totally happy with it. But whatever. I think they try that at one point. They put different inserts in the Jordan 1.
I mean, there's been so many.
Does anybody remember that?
I feel like there's been versions of the one that were, visually just slightly off from the one that had the, like, what was the? I'm drawing a blank right now, but the shoe that Jordan played in, at, I think he played in at, or no, maybe not. It was like it had like almost like leather wrapped outsole kind of thing. You remember what that was, Jacques?
No, it's not coming to me.
Let me see if I can find it real quick.
Yeah. Well, while he's looking for that, Alpha. There you go. Yes, the Jordan 1 Alpha.
And it was like they did all the original colors, but it had like, a light. It wasn't a leather. It was a really like kind of odd. I don't know, because it was perforated, and it just it was just not the right. I don't know. It was just not done the right way. But the concept behind it, or the thought behind it, at least, was like a home run, right? Like, make the Jordan 1, make it look as close to original as possible, and make it comfortable. Like, that's the one thing that where, because like for me, like the Jordan, I agree, the Jordan 1 is not the most comfortable shoe. It's one of those shoes. It's like, it looks so good, I'm gonna wear it. I feel the same way about Chucks. I feel the same way about Adidas Superstars. I feel the same way about a lot of those old school shoes that just, they're not comfortable. But that's the thing that, like, even this year, like, we had like the black cement 3s, with the Nike Air on the back. Like, to me, that's like, I think there's probably a couple of dozen shoes that I would consider perfect, and that's one of those shoes that's perfect. And given the choice to wear a pair of Jordan 3s or Jordan 1s, comfort-wise, it's like the 3s are, exponentially more comfortable, which is the only, the only downside to Jordan 1s. Because if they did have something like, interchangeable insoles or something like that but kept the look and feel like you said, I'm kind of that same, typically like all black and then, Jordan 1s or Jordan 3s. So
yeah, and I get, just make it look like the OG. Like, I'm okay with it looking like the OG. I just need the insole to be different. You can even make it visually look like the regular insole, but just make it react or make it lunar or something. Just need some cushioning, and I'll be good. But again, anyway, let me get off my high horse here. So something that was missing from this year is auto lacing. I expected there to be a new Hyper Adapt by now, which is something I see missing from this year. And Mr. Parker, Mr. Mark Parker of the Nike conglomerate, was even quoted, Tiffany reminded me, he was quoted saying that there was going to be something happening this year with auto lacing, and I haven't seen anything yet. So I'm a little, is perturbed a good word to use? Perturbed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's, Mr. Parker, what's going on there? I know Tiffany probably can't reveal too much, but what's happening, Tiffany? Why haven't we seen it yet?
Yeah, I don't know. I expected to see it also this year, just from one of the stock meeting, one of their profit sharing meetings.
Yeah, investor calls.
Investor calls, yeah. So I'm actually surprised too. I mean, the year's not over. We do have a solid 2.5 weeks left. So, I mean, but it seems like if they're going to launch it before the end of this year, it's kind of bad timing at this point during Christmas and everyone's on break. But who knows? Nike's always surprised us in the past. My guess would be that it's giving us more time to save our money, maybe, or I don't know. Maybe they got
I don't like the sound of that.
They got some amazing story planned for it. I am definitely surprised to have not seen it yet. I don't know actually anything about where it's at or where it's going. You know, it's believe it or not, I've been gone for over a year and a half now, which just kind of blows my mind. But
Wow.
yeah, I mean, I can't wait. I mean, the moment that thing comes out, Jacques, as soon as you hear about it, I want a phone call or a text.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm on it, and I'll definitely be trying to get myself a pair. I just hope that the pricing isn't outrageous. I have a feeling that it's going to be outrageous again.
What's not outrageous for you? So, like, what do you think is the right price point for it?
Oh gosh, that's a great question, and I'm gonna put that price at like $250, $300.
Yeah. It's interesting since I've been buying shoes now and I still bought them before. Just want to be clear about that. I just got an employee discount. Now that I'm buying shoes, like anything that gets close, like over the 175 mark is kind of like, I don't know, like it's got to be really good. And so it makes much more sense to me now why, you know, the Hyperadapt was so shocking at that price point. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be hard if, like, I'm curious to see what it does. I'm curious to see how you interact with it. I'm curious to see battery life, you know, because I think we knocked it out of the park on battery life with the first one.
Right. Humble brag. I get it.
Deservedly so.
I'm curious.
Well deserved, though.
I'm curious to see lighting. I actually thought after the first Hyperadapt with lighting, we'd see a lot more lighting in shoes, but I don't recall a single pair that has had lights in it this year, at least.
No.
So I'm really curious to see it. Weight too. You know, the weight was a big deal on the last round. At least for me, I wanted to make sure it was light, but. Yeah, so I think they have high expectations, you know, even though one shoe's already been launched. I think after everyone tried it, they all create expectation for the next one. So that's hard to design around.
Yeah, and I feel like they've let the buzz die a little bit too. Like there was such a hype for it, and I was expecting, you know, I think because that was what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
It was 2015.
Yeah, that's crazy.
2015, like.
Yeah, when it was announced,
Wow.
and then we started selling. I think it was still in 2015, and then definitely in 2016. So, yeah, I'm really surprised. I thought we would have saw it by now for sure. Don't get me wrong, though. I mean, this is a challenging shoe to make. It took a long time to get to the first one, and it's definitely got a lot of challenges that you don't see in normal footwear.
And like with that shoe, like you could do everything like you normally would in that shoe, right? The Hyperadapt in the first one, the 1.0, like you could play ball, you could run, you could train, you could do everything in that shoe. It wasn't like a trophy piece.
No, yeah, we tested it specifically for that. I have a bit of bias towards performance and making sure shoes are worn, even though the mag, you know. But besides that, I mean, it basically had a basketball midsole on it, right? So it was the width and height of a basketball midsole, but it had a outsole that was for running. And so we kind of built it in a way that it would work for running, training, and basketball so that people could do everything in it. Now, my understanding is that this next one's basketball focused. I think Tinker's said that now a couple times, and Mark Parker even mentioned that, right? So I'm super curious to see what it is, the benefits of it, and how it works.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see where it goes. Maybe early 2019. Maybe that's maybe All-Star. Maybe that's going to happen at All-Star or something like that. Maybe we'll see it pop out then.
Yeah, or maybe it's 2020 and it's going to hover. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Don't play with my emotions like that. Don't play with my heart. Don't play with my heart. And speaking of my heart, something that I'm very close to, and I've kind of taken a bit of an attachment to this year, is the eco-friendly angle for sneakers. I feel like a lot has been made, or a lot has been done in the past year, kind of, I would say, acknowledging some of the drawbacks of sneakers that we don't necessarily understand or realize, like how that stuff impacts the environment, which is not really a conversation we generally have. But due to the science peoples, the people that are way smarter than me, it seems like we've made some strides in that arena. One being corn-based shoes. Sorry, not cotton, but corn-based shoes, which is absolutely amazing to me. That to make shoes out of food, there's definitely some room to grow in that area. And Tiffany, I'm going to kind of lean on you because I remember last time we talked about this. You said there were certain things that need to be taken into consideration, even though the shoes are still made out of corn. There's other factors involved as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this goes back to, like, it's great that we're looking at environmental factors when we look at shoes, because they definitely haven't been the best in the past. But using a renewable material to make your shoes, so that's what the corn and kind of the plant-based shoes are all about. There's some that are made with mushrooms and things like that, but it's renewable, right? So it continues to grow, so we always have access to it, where if we're constantly using plastic or leather, like we're having to grow cows, we're having to get oil and natural resources used for it. So the idea of using something that's renewable is great. However, it doesn't solve the problem of being recyclable or biodegradable. And just because you use a material like corn doesn't mean it's biodegradable. I mean, those shoes are still going into incinerators and landfills. So
right.
I love that they're looking at the front end, but they need to be looking at the back end and making shoes more decompostable and recyclable, which even the Parley shoes, they don't exactly do that. There are a few brands out there that are looking at it, like, for example, Allbirds. All of their components in their shoes are recycled, and I guess if you take them apart, if you cut them apart, you can recycle parts of them, like their I think it's their slide that's made out of sugar cane. I think you can put that in a recycling bin in certain countries, but I'm not sure about the details. I have to look it back up. But it's the idea of, if it's not a collectible shoe, if it's an everyday wear shoe, and you're going to wear it out, what do you do with it at the end? And I think that's where I wish brands would focus a little bit stronger on. Even though we've seen good moves in that area. Nike has that grind program where they like put out a national contest where you could win money, and the people came up with turning it into asphalt. So like putting the shoe components into asphalt, and then also like rock climbing things, the rock climbing things that you attach to the wall, like making those out of them. So those are some pretty cool ideas, and that's a start for sure.
Yeah. And I remember last time we talked about this, you said that that the recycling part is actually the harder part of the process because of gosh, I know I'm going to mess this up, but once you use something and you have to recycle it, didn't you say it's something about the properties change or something like that? What was it about the properties once you recycle it?
Well, yeah, so in general, when materials are recycled, so when you have a brand new material, it's called a virgin material, right? And every time it gets recycled, it basically damages the properties of it. So for example, if you have like a nylon material, every time you recycle it, it's not going to be as strong as it was originally, right? Because all the fibers are broken down, and then you polymerize it. Same thing like with same thing with actually clear plastics, the clear sides like polycarbonates. Every time you recycle them, they're not quite as clear as they were before. So you have these little property changes. And then also another part of that is when they're out in the world, there's a lot of other chemicals and things. Like think if you step into gas, or you step into some oil or something else that's on the ground or the street, right? We have to hope the recycling program is washing those all off and cleaning it well enough so that it's not going into our new product, right? So you have that issue too. There's just so many dynamics around recycling that make it super, super challenging.
That's wow. Yeah, that's
yeah. I mean, Go ahead, Nick.
I was just gonna say, it's just so many things that like as a normal consumer, like you don't think about, right? I mean, I like, you know, do my best in so many different ways, but to think about all the things that, like, just talking about like stepping in something that and thinking about how that is, like, you know, like reprocessed back into other things and how much it could affect it just, I mean, it's almost like daunting, right? It's like, how do we ever get past that? But it's, you know, this year's been really awesome. And I mean, I think like it's been awesome to talk to you two about this on a regular basis, because it's something that has come up. I feel like every other show we've talked about a new company trying something different, you know, like I remember the gum soles thing, and, you know, it's like, it sounds crazy when you first hear about it, but it's like, it's worth trying. You know, there's like almost no reason not to try, at least to a certain point, like seeing what can work better than what we're doing, right? Because, you know, especially with like the kind of the climate report that just came out, you know, at the end of last month, where it was like, yeah, we better get it together as a society, or we might be in trouble a lot sooner than we thought, you know?
Yeah. Now, going from the eco-friendly angle, something else that really jumped out to me this year, and I don't know if this was just this year, but it's what Adidas was doing with the 4D and 3D printing with sneakers, well, at least the outsole of shoes. And I believe Under Armour did some stuff this year as well with the 3D printing. I'm still really fascinated by that angle and how you can really get down to the pixels, like the design and the tension and the materials that you use. And Tiffany, I'm going to kind of lean on you, because from a layman's perspective, I think that is so cool. That's awesome. Be able to print shoes at home, or be able to print shoes for you at a store, and it not be an inferior product. Are we close to that, or is that really just still like, am I falling into the hype of the marketing material?
Yeah, I think we're closer, right? So I don't think we're there yet. And really, it's going to take a materials breakthrough to get there, right? So most of these printing methods is exactly it. It's printing. So just like you lay down ink, you're laying down a material, right? And so because it's printed and you're laying down layer after layer after layer, you have to think about how those layers are joining. And that's where they become weak. You know, anywhere you have a joint in electronics and woodworking, you know, and almost any material where there's a joint, that's a weak spot. And so in these 3D printing, you know, you're relying on those joints to hold up. And I think that's why we haven't seen, you know, as much, we haven't seen that kind of come forward faster than it already is. However, Nike's built uppers now that have been 3D printed, right? I didn't get to see that shoe, but uppers a bit more challenging, I think, because of the dynamics and the stretch that goes into it. So having not seen that upper, I don't know if it's stretch or not, but it was listed as like a high performance shoe. So I have to believe that there's some advancement happening. Now, I don't know the reality of actually printing all your shoes at home, you know, like, I mean, how many people have printers in their house where they print paper? I mean, I do, but I got to say, I'm using it less and less and less. So it's like,
right.
Even if you had the printer, like you have a stove, but how often do you bake? Or you have an oven, how often do you bake? You know, like,
right.
Just because we can doesn't mean it will. But I do think it is interesting when you think of it from an environmental standpoint. Like if you can grow your own shoe and it wears out after, you know, 2 months, and you just grow another one, and you throw it in your recycling bin, or you throw it maybe in a recycling that prints the next shoe, like that starts to become really interesting. And I think in like third world countries and things like that, it starts to become interesting. But I don't think in the sneaker world, I don't know that it's ever going to be big.
That's just such a fantastic thought for me to think of, being able to print your own shoe at home and be like, oh, my shoe's worn out, I'll just print up another pair. That's an amazing thought to me. That's amazing.
I mean, if you think about it though, like if you had a sewing machine and you had the fabric, if your t-shirt wears out, you could make your own t-shirt. You could just like stitch it together. It's not quite as automatic. I mean, everyone thinks these printers will just magically do everything, but you're going to have to clean off some excess material and things like that. I don't know if you've ever worked with rapid prototyping, but there's a bit of cleaning that has to happen. So
yeah, I think
I'm fascinated.
I am too, and I think it'll end up being one of those things where that's a great example of like you could fix your own T-shirt, but are you actually going to do that? Like, that's kind of like the mindset, like the challenge for it is almost like, how do you even, there'll probably some person that will like one-off print midsoles and make some sort of interchangeable, footwear, right? Like that's kind of what I see as like the first homemade thing happening. And they'll find some way to, maybe attach an upper, but it will never live up to the performance standards of what the brands are trying to make and have to live up to, right? And you'll have those people that are like, want to be first to try something, and they'll spend a bunch of money to do it, but it'll just be for the kind of the cool factor of it, right? It won't be like really a usable, functional piece of their kind of attire, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you got to remember too, what the brands are doing with it is they're not setting it up so you print your shoes at home, right? Mm-hmm. They're doing it trying to do it at a mass scale.
Yeah.
Right. So if they can print things at a mass scale that quickly, it saves them on tooling, right? They don't have to build tooling anymore, which is metal and it's heavy and it takes a lot of money and time to make. So it improves their process, but they're not necessarily going to be the ones to bring it to your living room, right? That's a completely different kind of thing. And frankly, once it's at scale with these big brands, you're not going to print it at home anyways. You're just going to go to Amazon and buy it, right?
Yep.
Like, it'll be faster than you printing it probably, So I think, though, Jacques, for sure, without a doubt, you're going to need one of these printers when you go to Mars.
Yes,
so
definitely.
That is an application that you're absolutely going to need it for. So,
I mean, stop playing. Stop playing. Don't get me all excited up in here. Don't get me all excited. But maybe that's the business plan. Everyone owns a printer, but you have to buy the plans from the big brands. And that's the new business model. Just putting it out there. Nike, hire me. Giving you guys an option. But with that being said, I want to transition to 2019 or 2020. So I'm going to pitch it to both of you guys. Tell me two things that you see happening in 2019 or 2020. The future, so to speak, of footwear from your perspective. Let's start with you, Nick. Two things you think happening in the next year to 2 years in the sneaker world.
Oh, the pressure, man. So I think we've gotten too crazy for collaborations, and I think that they'll become more refined. I don't think that we'll see less of them, because you'll always have reasons for people to work together, just because if you can find the right person to work with, it turns into something incredible, kind of like like the Fear of God stuff with Nike basketball. And I think that it's just going to become, the brands will become more selective with that, and you'll see a little bit more leeway. You'll see people, that you normally wouldn't have thought could, let's say, design a shoe, being brought into, the Nikes, Adidas, and whatever to actually be a part of designing a shoe. Because then it gives people a much, like, sharing that experience becomes something that consumers can get behind, right? Like, if this, like, using Fear of God as the example, here's Jerry Lorenzo's somebody who's been incredibly successful with his own brand, worked on, I don't think he's on season 6 of the Fear of God stuff, but like, helped Kanye's team develop the original Yeezy 750. And now seeing him get to create a shoe with Nike, that you just get to see that like pure passion and like the excitement from somebody that's already done a lot of incredible things. And I think that is something that a lot of people will try to emulate. On the other side, I think like just from a style perspective, like I really think that we're kind of getting close to like shifting back towards like more of those like 80s or 90s like really bulky high top shoes, just because we haven't seen them in quite a while. You know, there's been a few companies that have put out, you know, like Adidas put out some retro stuff with Eric Emanuel that was really cool, but like it's really a small niche. But I think like from a fashion perspective, it's going to shift again, right? Like we've been kind of on this, like we went from like, you know, the super slim, you know, Ultra Boost style like Yeezys into, you know, more of like the chunkier quote dad shoes. And I think the next progression is just getting into like the, you know, I don't know, like think of like the you know, David Robinson shoes from the 90s, right, where, you know, the shoe is just massive, and at that time it was like a performance shoe, which obviously we realize now that like that doesn't make any sense. But, you know, looking at like the fashion side of things, I think that will be like a big trend in the next like probably, you know, year or two. I don't know. How about, what do you think, Tiffany?
Gave me a lot of time to think there. That was good. Man, I'm going to say, I'm going to look out in 2020 and maybe a little bit further. I think you're going to see double or triple the amount of brands that there are right now. I mean, there are small brands coming out of the woodwork everywhere. And I would love to see some of the big brands. And I actually think they're going to have to, because I think all these little brands together are going to start taking chunks out of them. I'd love to see them be like, hey, Allbirds. Like, I don't know how you do it, but like, Allbirds, come here. Like, here, we'll let you use our supply chain and our distribution. Or, you know what I mean? Like, obviously there's some weird business models in there, but like, I think the little brands are going to start to take over a bit. I don't think we're going to see a lot of electronics. It's just not there yet. It's too big. It's too expensive. It just doesn't make sense yet. But I think the second thing is I would love to see, you know, toe to heel, fully recycled, made of recycled shoe that you throw in your recycling bin. And I think that's aggressive, but I'd love to see it. You know, Adi says by 2024 they'll be fully recycled.
Right.
But, you know, I think some of these smaller brands are going after it, and they maybe can go faster because they're small. But I'd love to see a shoe that when I'm done, I recycle it. And I think the third thing is, and I have to, like, you know, I said a little earlier in maybe one of our podcasts, but I thought, you know, people aren't going to keep collecting shoes because people's collections are so big right now, and I'm suffering from this. My collection's so big right now. I don't even like some of the pairs. Like, I have to get rid of them, but I can't help to keep buying the pairs that I like, you know? And so I hope that there's like some massive closet integration and like super awesome storage systems for shoes developed so that you can have as many as you want, and you can do it in a like more organized kind of smaller space, if you will.
That's awesome.
Now that's something that intrigues me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go a little bit of a different route. I feel like sneakers are becoming a bit homogenized as far as like acceptance, and I don't know where we are in that process. I feel like so many people are into sneakers, and I don't know how long that can last. I feel like it's still super trendy, and I guess my concern is that in the next year or so, there's going to be a bit of a fall off, and it's going to have an impact on the sneaker world. I think sneakers grew, like we went through that super hype, and then it kind of tamed off a little bit, and now it's growing again. And I think I think within the next year or so, we're just going to see a change in sneaker culture in general. I think it's going to kind of go back to maybe a niche thing, I could be totally wrong with that. It could go the opposite way, where it turns into like a Marvel thing, and like everybody's just into it and continue to be into it. But we'll see. The second thing is on the collab front. This kind of goes to what Nick was saying. I'm hoping that brands take these collabs a lot more seriously. And when I say that, I mean that they make them moments instead of trying to drag them out. Like with the Virgil stuff, I feel like it's losing a bit of its cachet because it seems like it's been dragged out for so long. I feel like they need to make it have moments as opposed to making it like a definite part of the brand. Like the Union stuff is great because like that moment's over, and that's something that we'll kind of always remember if you were in the sneaker world at that time. Whereas this Virgil stuff, I feel like there isn't like we can't really nail down a moment for the Virgil stuff anymore. It's just like there's just Off-White stuff with Nike now. There's not a moment attached to it anymore.
It's like 2018.
So
the whole year.
Right. Yeah. Like 2018, 2017. Was it like the end of 2016 when they first came out? Like all of that kind of seems like that's all like a Virgil moment. And that, I don't know. For me, I would hope that brands start to make those moments as opposed to, stretching it out and trying to milk the cow, I guess. Like, let's have that moment and let that live and be what it is. And that allows you to bring it back years later, and people have like this deep, fond nostalgia for it, as opposed to like, oh, like didn't they just do that last year kind of thing? Like I don't want to have to think about that when it comes to Off-White. And then the final thing is more collabs with NASA. I don't know who's going to do it, but someone's going to do more collabs with NASA, and I'm going to be all over it. So shout out to the folks at NASA, because I appreciate you licensing out that logo. You've got a fan in me, you've got a friend in me, and I'm here for you whenever you need me. Give me a call whenever you're ready to have a regular person go to space, because I am available, and I'll have the shoes to prove it. So those are my thoughts. But that's a wrap. That's a wrap for Outside the Box podcast. Those are our thoughts on the big moments in 2018. And actually, before I say that, are there any other moments? Am I wrapping up too soon? Are there some moments you guys want to highlight? Did I shut this thing down too soon?
I mean, there was like
these pretty good.
Yeah, there was 3 people that started a podcast called Outside the Box. But other than that, yeah.
All right. I'll take that. Well, with that being said, we want to thank you guys for listening to the Outside the Box podcast this year. This was a grand experiment that Tiffany, Nick, and I went on, and we are more than overjoyed by the sort of response that we got and the passion that you guys showed for this show. We had no idea what this would be. Really, it was just 3 people that love sneakers, that love talking about sneakers, that love culture, that love pop culture, that just love a bunch of things, really, and wanted to get on once a week and talk about it. And you guys fully embraced us, and I just think that's absolutely incredible, and we appreciate it. We have been on a bit of a break, but we'll be back next year, sometime after the holidays roll around and we get things back in order. We'll be back with the podcast. Thank you guys for listening on SoundCloud, on Apple Music, on Apple Podcasts, on the Google Play Store, Stitcher, or wherever it is you're listening to the show. We definitely appreciate it. If you want to find me anywhere, I'm in these digital streets all the time. You can find me at Cousteau, which is Kustoo. That's on Facebook, Instagrams, the Twitters, sometimes on the Snapchats, but more often than not, I'm on the YouTubes. But you can find me there. But as I always say, this show would not be what it is without the other 2 individuals on this show. They are the host. I am simply the intern that brings coffee and donuts and interjects and messes up things, tries to jump in the conversation and has no idea what he's talking about. Mainly, I'm going to toss this to Nick so he can fix this whole thing. Even the outro was bad. Let them know where they can find you, Nick.
You can find me at Nick Engvall, NickEngvall, or at Sneaker History on all platforms. And I just want to say it's been awesome to get to talk to the two of you and learn, even though Jacques is an intern, he's an incredibly talented intern. And, you know, obviously getting to talk with Tiffany, and learn, and this has just been you know, as fun for me as I hope it's been for the people watching and listening across there. But Tiffany, go ahead and let them know how they can find you.
Tiffany Beers. You can find me at Tiffany Beers on Instagram and YouTube. And I have to say, I thought of one more thing I want to see in 2019, and that's Nick's YouTube channel, because that will be one to watch. And
Shots fired.
boom. Thank you all so much. I just really have to reiterate what Jacques said. You guys have been the best followers, fans, listening, chiming in on our stories, you know, being patient with the Lacer Racers. They've been on a break for a while too. You know, this has been like so fun. I didn't know what to expect, and this has really been a blast, and it's because of our fans and the comments and just the general funness of the whole thing. So thanks to you, Nick, and Jacques, you're the best investment intern I could ever imagine. I mean, that's fantastic. Yes. I didn't know you were an intern in this. I thought you were our fearless leader as an intern. That's great. So
no.
Yeah, when
just
you go to
intern,
NASA though, I want this as part of the gig still. So you still have to do the podcast.
Absolutely. Although I'll probably have top level clearance, so there will be certain things that I won't be able to talk about. So I just want to put that out there.
What's the time delay on
delay
on you know, recording from Mars? We got to figure that out.
Yeah, we've definitely got to figure that out, because at the first chance I get, I am gone. And with that said, we are gone. Again, thank you guys for listening. You can follow us at the Outside Pods on the Twitter and the Instagrams. We appreciate you guys. The show will be back 2019. We'll get this thing going again, but we appreciate you. Thank you guys for listening. Hope you had a wonderful, wonderful season, and we'll see you guys and talk to you guys soon. Peace.